So today's this weekend really, it's been on Empire of the Sun. It's well, it's a topic that I haven't looked into enough, to tell you the truth. My own gaming on the Pacific Theater has been limited to the big strategic games that cover the whole of World War II, including the Pacific, and Victory in the Pacific, which is a cute little game, but I have to say it doesn't really feel like much of a war game to me. I'm willing to say it is one, just a very light one or whatever. But anyway, let's go to this one, because this one clearly is a serious attempt to simulate what's going on here. Now, looking at the components, so I want to start with that. The map, to me, it's a work of beauty. I mean, look at the videos for just looking on my table, seeing something that size. It's not huge, it's a single map sheet which covers the breadth of all of the Pacific, and it really put it into perspective for me in a way that the monsters don't. When I put out 9 maps and 8 of them are all water, well, 6 of them whatever, it's so big, it just doesn't strike me. But here, it really brought home in a way that I'm not used to seeing. Just how tiny those islands are, and how little land there is, and how much water there is, and how hard it is to get from Japan to Hawaii or vice versa, just looking at it. I'm sure the huge ones, the Japan to Hawaii, is clear. Cards. I liked the cards in this one a lot. They were very easy to shuffle, flexible. I think GMT's moving towards a more flexible card, or maybe it's just the designer games that come out with those really hard stock ones that last longer. There's no question they're going to be sturdier, but wow, they're a pain to shuffle. Counters, nice, serviceable, I think fairly pretty. This is, what I'd expect from GMT, to tell you the truth. Always good components there. The rule book, let's look at the player aids. Player aids are vital. You got your charts here, your combat charts. There's not a lot here, but this chart, this one page, is most of what you'll need through the game. And on the back side, you have the setup on a map. Not terribly important, but it gives you a space. As always, through some materials in. This other chart I hardly used. Gives you the sequence of play, which is useful, but the sequence of play is fairly simple in this. It gives you the offensives procedure, which is probably a useful little thing, but you get used to that pretty quickly, I think. Movement allowances, those are usually fairly easy to calculate, and a few other key notes as reminders. Inside, some more reminders, useful stuff. I mean, if you memorize these couple pages, you're going to be much stronger at not having to do what I do, which is paging through the rules all the time. List of effects of national on the U.S. political will, what surrenders. Again, those would be really helpful. I just wasn't paying enough attention to them. And then this battle factor calculator, which the numbers aren't hard to crunch on this, but I could see where some people would want it, and hey, it avoids having to use a calculator in the game, which is useful. The rulebook itself, pleasant to read, no question. Nice notes, designer notes and examples printed throughout in a different font. I didn't feel like I needed the examples too much, which is usual, but there were a couple of places where I'd say, wait, what's going on here? Or I didn't get that, and they were definitely helpful there. And so they're serving their purpose. The game has mechanics, though, that are so innovative. Really, I mean, it's not, we've seen CDGs before. There are some slight differences to these. That's not what I'm talking about here. It may actually just be for me, the Pacific Theater, these big expanses, but designating a force from all over the place. That's very different from most CDGs where it's like, oh, I can move these units because they're stacked with me. Or no limitation at all on command. In this, there's very, very strong command parameters, but they span such a large area that you can pull forces from a lot of different places without really worrying about it. It's usually you're more limited by the ops value on the card, which determines your movement. One of those little weird things in this that, it's like learning CDGs all over again for me to read this one and try to work through it. But it's worth it. It's a really, really interesting take on the mechanism, and I think very refreshing. And I found it really handled the feel of a Pacific War very well on that level. I feel like there's always this kind of painful situation where you have, when just taking the Pacific War as a theater in isolation, you're in a situation where you have this problem of Japan cannot win. They cannot win the war. So then the mechanism goes into play of how do you make a fair game out of it, yet still, maintain the historical fact of the situation. Here, I'm not sure the game does as good a job as it does with the mechanics, with the scope, with the feel, and the flavor of the whole thing. Because maybe it's just my experience on this one game where, I'm playing without any idea of what I'm doing for the first couple turns at least. But it led to my mind the thought that there might be a strategy where Japan doesn't take a lot. They try to limit what additional stuff they take. How much can you reasonably do there, though? That's what I'm thinking. So here's the danger. If that's the case, if what I saw in my game is actually not that Japan didn't take most of what they were supposed to, but if that's not, if you shouldn't be pushing to take as much as you can with Japan, if you should be holding back to make it harder for the U.S. to actually take your islands, to take your locations, because they got to get 5 a turn starting on turn 4. Wow, that's that's a pretty hefty goal. I found it hard to take that many. Maybe I lost too many U.S. forces early in the game by conducting offensives that didn't count towards that. Trying, for example, I tried to position myself with the U.S. so that it would be easy to start taking things, that I didn't have to make that big jump. But that big jump is an expensive step, and it may have weakened my Navy too much too early. So I start taking the penalty for the carriers, and then I don't have the forces to take as many things as I need to, because I've kind of accelerated the pace of what I'm taking back. So the other side, though, is can Japan even follow that strategy? There's not a whole lot that they that I took in the game that you don't want to take. So for example, let's say you don't take the Dutch territories, because that's the big one, right? I mean, I'm taking an island or two out in the Central Pacific, but it's really the Dutch and then, say, the Australian mandate, which I failed to get. I don't think you want that, though. I think that's a clear case of something that you're making it easier for the U.S. to have options to attack you from, into. But with the Dutch territories, if you don't take that, your hand size is going to be too small, and I think it's going to be very, very easy for the U.S. to roll over you. It'd be kind of interesting if somebody played that strategy. Hey, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to let the U.S. have to take the really hard stuff to take, where my fleet is concentrated in one place. And sure, I don't have a lot of cards to react, but chances are I'm going to get initiative I'm going to get a reaction move anyway off these intelligence mechanisms. There's another neat little mechanism that, wow, I mean, you've never seen anything like this, I think, in a CDG game, which, and this whole idea of, I commit to this action, and it could be spread across, several different islands, whatever, to this whole operation. And now we don't know whether you're going to react or not as the reacting player. And we don't know, it might even be an ambush if you have the right card. But we're ignoring that. It could be, a complete surprise, in which case the reactive player gets to do nothing. Or it could be one where they get to actually conduct maybe a minor offensive on their own within that in some cases. Just a bunch of really different concepts that are hard for me to grasp all at once, and it took playing a little bit before I got any real feel for it, and I don't know if I got a strong feel yet. This is a game that you can probably play several times and just keep discovering new facets about it that you want to play with, which I think is really great for a lot of people. It kind of makes me sad that I'm not one of those people, or that I have too many games. I can't just get excited about this and play this for the next 2 months or something, game after game. There's another thing. It's not terribly long, I don't think. Granted, my game went short. But it takes me a long time to play something like this, Solitaire, because there's so many decisions to make. I was going to say way too many, but most people seem to like a lot of decision making in their games, but my poor little brain can't handle it. It really can't. I walk away from the table each time I play a card, basically. And I'm not sure that I want to go through all the thought to play the next card. Now, I had this originally with some of the early CDGs, and now I think I've gotten to a comfort zone in playing them. I think I can get to that with this, with more experience, but it was very hard approaching it the first time. All those decisions that weren't clear to me. Another thing that I found myself constantly feeling is that I'm holding this hand of cards. These are a limited resource. They're valuable, obviously, but I kept feeling like I don't have something I want to do at all with them at times. That's a disturbing feeling. Now, on the last turn, I kind of got over that and was able to reposition troops. And there was stuff I could have done along those lines all along. But early in the game, I took the cards as, I'm going to do an offensive. I'm going to do an offensive. I think that's the wrong way to approach it. I think you really do have to look at, I'm going to build up to do the offensive that I want. You make your plan on the turn. You don't just jump on everything. Now, the first couple turns where Japan has to take so much, I think they do want to just keep playing offensives largely. They've got enough forces that there's not a lot of repositioning they have to do. But later in the game, as they want to set up their defenses, I think they need to use cards just to move. And likewise, the U.S., when they attack, they're far enough away, at least at first, that that they may need to take a pause and play a card to reposition. The reaction cards are a nice little bonus to this. They're not like so many of the other games have reaction cards that feel, I don't know, sort of not terribly reactive. These, a lot of them feel, I don't know, it really pleased me the way it hung together as a game on a subject that I'm not terribly haven't really explored all that much, and I'm not can't say I'm all that fond of it in general, but I think this game really fills a nice niche here. I don't know of anything else that's at this level, without going the overblown monster Pacific War level, which I want to get up on the table too. But I think I'm going back to SPQR. I don't know if I'm going to take a tiny little break, play something really, really tiny before I do, but I feel this obligation to get through more of those scenarios at least. I sorted the whole thing, right? I printed out scenarios I have counters for. All right.